Welcome to my Fenrir deck profile. I'm about to show you that Fenrir is a viable option in the premium format, so buckle up and enjoy the ride. To start with, we have 4 Mythic Beast Fenrir. He is a downgrade in some ways from V-Series Fenrir, in that you cannot access the popular Veratrum and Vanguard combo. But if you look past that, every time you stride, you will soul charge 3. Now bear in mind, this does make Amaruta an inconvenient stride since you require 4 or less soul to use all the abilities. However, Amaruta is not the main game plan. I decided to limit to 4 additional grade 3s with CEO Yggdrasil. Having more is nice due to paying the cost to stride Dion, but we are already main decking grade 0s and we really need to ride, so for now I left things as they are. CEO is a way in which you can multi-attack even with lucky triggers being used for 2 battles. We play more criticals, so those triggers will be more effective compared to the old G Fenrir deck. CEO can add gauges too while searching Norns out. But what makes this combo better is that if you have Norn already, you can use the force markers available for 1 battle and then replace that unit with CEO from Soul Blasting to place where the markers in Norn is. Personally, I am not the biggest fan of CEOs. They are often greedy and put their own priorities ahead of everybody else. CEO Yggdrasil and Amaterasu being in the United Sanctuary would already be bad for Angel Feathers moving away from a privatized healthcare system. Next, we have 4 copies of Gleipnir. This card is good for adding PGs, heals, or even combo cards like CEO to hand. I really like that. You can also Soul Blast mid-battle to trigger the superior call abilities, extending more attacks, and he does gain 10k too. I don't know about you, but that is pretty good to me. Next, 4 Flying Lapwing. I wanted to play Spiritualist Sorcerer Kraut, but we needed to limit grade 3. And since we can now stride on turn 3 during the main phase, Lapwing is now much better than he ever was. You can basically draw into a fresh card while having this as an additional unit on board to pay for the cost of Anavarta, making it feel more free and helping households keep up with the rising costs for inflation on card abilities. Making more soul is key to the turn 4 play, which we will get to later. 3 Norn. The space was tight, but calling this is good as mentioned earlier, for setting the gauge and then calling CEO during battle to maximize the efficiency of the double force stack. You also soul charge a lot and run the risk of losing these to the soul, so 3 might be an okay number. 4G Era Skull, you need this to search for Fenrir guaranteed. Revealing grade 3 heals can also help you search. However, you may want to mix in some countercharge heals now that the powers were updated and Harmonix Messiah can protect you going second. The deck is counterblast heavy, unfortunately. You need Fenrir badly because you will fall behind otherwise. Also, since the new Stride Erratas work during main phase, you can still search costs after drawing cards with abilities. 4 Gelja, this helps to soul charge more like with Dimension Creeper, but you also gain power and ruin Mega Colony, which to be honest is the best reason to play this deck. 4 Oranges, I do not know about this one. There aren't many Soul Blasters besides some strides. Since the deck does deck out fast, they are handy for emergencies, but also good with over-triggers. However, you do need to bear in mind that checking the over-trigger will draw you an extra deck, risking deck out. 2 Lading, this is a reason I didn't want to play more grade 3 cards. This is very good because it is a free superior call. As you may recall, this deck uses a lot of counterblast. You can also add this to hand with Gleipnir and lean to it for multiple attacks in addition to Fenrir's own ability. Lading has never been this good now that you can achieve Generation Break on turn 3 during the main phase. As for the triggers, I highly recommend against using the Keter over-trigger because the Keter one will deck you out. The vanilla is a safe option. 4 Stake Fetter Thavidi, damaging this now gets you a draw. Otherwise, these aren't much different to GB1 criticals now. 1 Tablet Angel Stride criticals might not be as important since we run G-Skull, and this card is more usable turn 3 than the Stride critical while riding first. 4 Kushinada Perfect Guards are more important than 30k shields. You need to guard over triggers, Unibird, and so on. 2 Dreaming Dragon, you need something to prevent deck out. The deck can superior call, so in an emergency you could call this. 4 AIAs, as mentioned earlier. Maybe mix some countercharge heals in so that you can retrieve more counterblast for the turn 4 combo. It is easy to get heals into the drop zone in this particular Genesis deck due to the mass soul charge and soul blast cost of Dion. And of course, you run the V starter. I don't want to use a Forerunner in case the opponent plays Gear Chronicle, Kagero, or something while going first. That would stop you ever being able to use the card. It is best to use the V starter still. On to the G zone. We use 2 Jagdan Aruga as the main finisher. This is the second stride, which can Soul Blast 3 to replace a Guardian with a new one from the top of the deck. Unfortunately, this card was only really good with Regalia when it was released. In other words, making the top 1% of Genesis even richer, while the 99% of Genesis decks struggled and fell into poverty. A disgrace, but History Collection makes Fenrir a mid-deck, thankfully, since Dion generates faster markers while soul charging, setting up for this stride. In addition, Fenrir's own skill is good with this. None of the other grade 3s, such as Himiko or V Fenrir, could let you superior call mid-battle during stride. This now makes the deck slightly more consistent at setting up, whereas before you had to entirely rely on hard drawing pieces and using Gleipnir. We have 2 copies of Dion. This helps to get a cheap draw from a selection of top 3, all while being able to combo with Fenrir on turn 3 to push some early attacks to hopefully push the opponent to higher damage. This is crucial because Jagdan Aruga struggled to work in builds outside Regalia due to the low-pressure buildup resulting from the Taro ban, making even a turn 4 win unlikely against a player who stays on low damage. With Fenrir and Dion making an easy 4 attacks with 2 force markers on top, getting the opponent on higher damage is likelier than before. We play 1 Harmonix Messiah. This card makes the deck playable. Otherwise, it would lose to ride-ups without the bonus shield for going second. However, it is a double-edged sword, since if you go first and the opponent receives the Blitz order, they can easily use that against you later during the Jagdan Aruga turn. You cannot break Blitz orders since they aren't Guardians. We also play 1 Marduk. This is simply for emergency strides when you cannot perform the stride action, but seek to benefit from the power buff and extra drive in some form. Muspel is here to countercharge. This is a very good stride in case the opponent damage denies you to slow you down. This deck does need its counterblasts. 2 Vanguard strides. Since we have CEO Yggdrasil, we can benefit from stacking triggers onto her with the stacked markers to hope for a breakthrough. 1 mythical Helsky Beast Fenrir. He is an option when you need to desperately draw or want to power up into a deck out or trigger Orange Witch to stack the OT. Remember, Orange Witch Valencia in the V series can only activate in the main phase. I am thinking of fitting in rear guards that can Soul Blast during the main phase, but I haven't yet decided how to go about this. 2 Air. This is a phenomenal G Guardian. It gains a lot of shield, but it has become more playable since grade 3 heals were introduced and Soul Blasting became faster during V series. 2 Anavarta. This card can be a lifesaver for some matchups where there are restands or overly large numbers. It is cheap to use with Lapwing, as mentioned earlier. Very efficient here. 1 Laurier. This card prevents deck out but also gains tremendous shield value. Lastly, 1 Hana Satsuki. Both her and Anavarta have the benefit of not depending on the drop zone, so you can still have G Guardians activate after using Dreaming Dragon. That is everything. I hope you enjoyed the Fenrir deck profile. Do rate, comment, and subscribe to help us out on the algorithm and share your thoughts or ideas. Together we can make a Genesis deck that works for all. History Collection is a great set which will revitalize some enjoyment in the game. Until next time, goodbye.